Nigerians joined the rest of the world in marking Labor Day this week, the second Labor Day, in fact, in this country under President Tinubu. The day was defined by the cost of living crisis as well as the growing issues around insecurity, the rule of law, and the perception that democracy is getting weaker, not stronger, under the Tinubu administration. There were also glimmers of hope as the unions acknowledged that their communication with the government was improving and the trust was slowly being established between the two sides. And with me are three commentators who are experts at scouring those headlines and unearthing everything that's both above and under the radar, and as I mentioned earlier, inspiring us with their sometimes unexpected analysis and illuminating beacons of knowledge. And they are the policy strategist and group CEO of the global investment and trade company, Baba Yusuf, who, as I speak, is being mic'd up in the off-site studio and will be joining us imminently. The public affairs analyst, Mazi Nnamdi Dixon Iroegbu, who is a member of the People's Democratic Party, and also here in the studio, the current affairs analyst and former presidential candidate, Fagbenro-Byron. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
And let me start with both of you whilst Baba Yusuf is getting mic'd up. I'm going to throw this at you first. We understand President Tinubu has embarked on a 2-day visit to Katsina amid all the immense security challenges taking place, not just in Katsina, but in other parts of the north. Let's begin with that before we move on to other things. What is your assessment of the significance of that visit?
Yes, clearly, Charles, thank you so much. This is another sad moment, sad reality that we face as a country, that the leader doesn't care about the people. And that's what's very sad. Because if you recall, the last time I came, I had an opportunity here, I said that he is also the consoler-in-chief, not just commander-in-chief. You know, whenever they mount this approach to the issues of insecurity in the country, the kinetic and the non-kinetic, I just wonder, I say, the president is supposed to be activating it by himself. That you came back from a long trip. While you were away, Nigerians were slaughtered in their numbers. You came back, you didn't visit there. Up till now, the president has not visited Plateau or Benue or some of these other places where these terrible things have happened to Nigerian people. So it just shows that that human part of him is missing. What we are faced with is politics, the campaign and all of that in the name of 2027. Mr. President, under your watch, the Nigerian people are being slaughtered. Insecurity is increasing by the day. And all you have to do is attend a jamboree, you know, in the name of wedding. It just tells that this president doesn't care. But I hope that this provokes the Nigerian people to understand truly that their destiny is in their hands. We just need to realize it, that this country is not captured. We're not a subdued or conquered people, that we deserve to live and that we deserve to demand for leadership from our leaders.
Right. Let me come to you, Mr. Byron. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Charles.
Do you think this visit to Katsina will allay the concerns that many people have about the president not being visibly present in areas where there is deepening insecurity?
In the first place, I believe that there are certain things that were missed out in my friend's commentary. When the president came, the very first thing he did was to have a meeting with security chiefs. That was his priority meeting. He had that meeting, and not only security chiefs, but with representatives from those states. The correlation between Katsina and, you know, that is, I mean, it's, I don't see, you know, what, I mean, he could have visited any other place. But what I'm saying is this, that the issue of security in Nigeria, as it is now, has to be addressed in a multifaceted manner. we have to get a security architecture in place. We have to consider the capacity of our security agencies.
I don't think that's in dispute.
readiness.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't think
yeah.
that's in dispute.
Yeah.
I think the point that he's making is that in addition to these things that you're talking about, optics are very important. It is important for the president to be seen to go and visit. If you look at what happened in India, for example, where people were killed, 26 people were killed.
I agree with you.
In Indian-administered Kashmir.
Yes.
You had Narendra Modi cancelling whatever he was doing and came straight back and was on top of it throughout. The same sort of thing happens in other places, but it doesn't seem to happen in Nigeria.
Well, even Ukraine that is at war. Even Ukraine that is at war.
You see, look, nobody knows every place that the president visits. And everybody has a style. There is the show of sympathy, and there's the actual act of sympathy. What we need to do is to make sure that things like Benue and Plateau don't happen again.
Yeah, but they keep happening, so that's not happening.
Well, the point is this. The point is
and
this.
they've been happening for many years.
But you cannot preempt. You cannot preempt what is going to happen next. You said the president traveled, he's come, he has visited, he's had meetings with his security operatives.
He's visited,
I hope, I don't want this thing to turn into a
No, it's not,
argument.
but at least we're all Nigerians. If he has
Yes,
visited, we
but
all know that he has visited.
But I didn't
visited.
interrupt you while you were speaking. I hope you don't.
I agree, sir. I agree. But with due respect, but not for you to misinform me. The president did not visit.
Hold on, Mr. Iroegbu, let him finish.
If he doesn't grant me the courtesy,
please.
we'll just have a shouting game. So what I'm saying is this. There are different approaches, and we all have different styles. It will appear, right, that some people will say, oh, let's be paying my courtesy visits. But I'm sure that some of his agents have gone and visited the place. What reason the president has not gone yet, or whether he has even gone that we are not aware of, I wouldn't know, except those who are probably trailing him. What he is going to do in Katsina, right, I can't speak for it. But it is not unconnected with consultations. Now, what we are saying is this. Do we want to solve the problem, or we want to play politics with what we perceive as the optics of the problem? For what any Benue person will tell you is that he wants this problem solved. How will we solve it? It will take high-level decisions, fundamental changes. Because you and I have said that this thing has been recurring, it's been happening. And there are certain dynamics that make this thing happen. We can't, we can't spill everything out, and we don't have all the facts. But people can only gesticulate, and people can only, but to say that optics is what you need. How many times have people demonstrated, how many times have we seen the optics and we have not seen the results?
Well, I don't think the point he was making is that optics is all you need.
Well, that was what that was what, I am not saying it is, I am not saying it is not important.
Right.
But I'm saying that there is a fundamental issue that is beyond optics.
Yeah. I think everybody would agree with you. Let me quickly, please, I must give... Baba Yusuf, I'm told, is ready in the off-site studio. Good to see you, Baba Yusuf. You're a bit far away from us, although we can communicate with you via microphones and so on. I wonder if you heard this conversation right now. There's something of a, if you like, a disagreement. Mr. Iroegbu seems to think that it's important for the president to be seen to visit those places where there's deepening insecurity. Mr. Byron seems to think that that is not as important as sitting down and working out how to solve the problem of insecurity. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Charles, for having me. It's good to see you again. Well, first of all, let me say without any doubt, one of the crucial characteristics of leadership is empathy. And empathy cannot reflect unless it is communicated, and then followed by the action itself of compassion. So I totally agree that there is need for leadership in Nigeria. And let me say this before we proceed, because I don't want to be caught up in the politics of it. Let's speak to the issue of leadership. From time immemorial in Nigeria, let me backtrack to around 2010, at almost the peak of this terrorism and insurgency in Nigeria, Charles. Presidents have lost elections because of lack of proper optics. I remember the Yanya bombing, Boko Haram in Abuja during the time of President Goodluck Jonathan, and the hue and cry of the lack of demonstration of empathy. So let us be clear about this. This is very important. Why is it important? Because during campaign, they use the optics to get the win to election, to convince people that they need to be voted into power, whether it is president or anybody across the strata of leadership. So very important, and I like the point you make, Charles, about the president of India and even in America. Everywhere leadership demonstrate empathy and connect with the people. That has been lacking in Nigeria for about 15 years or more. And what we are saying is we need to see this. You don't need the periodic time of elections to demonstrate the optics. It is part of leadership. Now, pointing to the visit of Mr. President to Katsina, I think the issue with the optics that I have with it is, with profound respect to His Excellency Governor of Katsina, they are going for the wedding of his children. Well, let us not forget that that is one of the hot pot of escalating terrorism in Nigeria. And I think part of the negative optics is the fact that Mr. President did not visit when people in Amusa, Entomaki, and other places are being slaughtered. Albeit now he is coming for a wedding ceremony. Neighboring Zamfara, Sokoto, Kebbi, and Co., and what we have in Borno. And I think the leadership was not able to organize this communication strategy, early enough. Now it seems it is permeating into the North Central, and most likely if Mr. President visits Plateau and Benue, the people in Northwest will say, oh, so we don't matter. And that is why it is important ab initio to have a communication strategy that will include these optics across Nigeria. It is the job of Mr. President to demonstrate that empathy, not just by bulletins, but being on the ground and connecting with the people, not just Benue, Plateau, and across Nigeria. So I agree, most likely the optic is good. And that is why when things are bad, we should visit people. Just like when there is time for merriment, we should visit people. When we visit for merriment in the midst of crisis, it appears we don't care. And that should matter.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that. I think he said it all, and let's not dwell on that any further. Let's move on, because we've got quite a number of topics to get to. And let me come back to you, Mazi Iroegbu. Let's turn to Labor Day, which took place just a day ago. President Tinubu said he will address the welfare of workers, which essentially means that he'll address the welfare of the entire nation, because, I mean, most people are workers or are connected to workers. Are you seeing signs that he's doing that, or just him saying that he's going to do this?
It's just what it is. He just has to keep saying that he will do and all of that. But practicality here now, for instance, by the way, I'm a filmmaker. What activates you on set is action. And that is also should apply here. Mr. President, it's not about mounting. The salary of the worker in Nigeria cannot afford him even a meal a day in 1 month. 1 meal a day. Not one with 1, 2, 3 members of his family and all of that. So every moment we say these things and celebrate May Day, and all, it should call for a moment of reflection. What have I done for my people? 2 years already, Mr. President. It's 2 years, and all we can hear is you will do, you are the one in charge. The buck stops at your table, and so far in 2 years, Nigerians are hungry. And there's no plan in place.
Well, in fairness,
that's the truth.
In fairness, Mazi Iroegbu, I mean, the president he raised the minimum wage by more than 100%, which no other leader has actually done in recent memory.
33,000 naira or 30,000 naira as he was before Mr. President came to power is more valuable than the 70,000 naira plus as Mr. President.
And I have to admit that that is a plausible argument.
By the economy of Nigeria today, that 30,000 naira could afford more than what 70,000 naira can give you today. That time, a bag of rice was 7,000 naira.
Yeah, but the truth is that you can only pay out what you can afford. So
Yeah.
the fact that he's made that more than 100% increase gesture suggests that if he had more, he would probably put out
Let's
more on
assess why the excuses that we have been getting, and also the accolades that the president has been getting, is that, oh, he took tough decision on the issue of subsidy, and that's because he had to save Nigeria money. Okay, haven't saved it. Jonathan, when he was going to remove subsidy, set up something called Shopee. Up till now, 2 years, the president has not set up anything to cushion the effect of that harsh decision he took on the 29th of May 2023. So these angles, I don't know, if anybody is still expecting anything to come from this government, then it's, maybe you don't know what's happening in town. It's politics of 27 already, 2027.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Mr. Byron.
Yes,
because, of course, it's not just about salaries, is it, Mr. Fagbenro? It's also about security, it's about jobs, it's about healthcare, it's about electricity, it's about democracy, it's about not rigging elections, and it's about the entrenchment of the rule of law, isn't it? So it's an all-encompassing thing.
Thank you very much. I think where my colleague misses it is the fact that salaries were increased by over 100%. That follows by an inflation. Now, this is economics. It's not every problem you just throw money at. I know that there is a limitation in the salaries, but you will see that the government itself, right, has responded after negotiation. One thing the leaders of Labour said was that the communication between this government and themselves has seriously improved. Now, when you improve the dialogue with the workers, I believe it behoves us to acknowledge that as a step in the right direction. Secondly,
yeah, but the problem people have is that we're always patting the government on
No,
the back
no.
for tiny little steps when the expectation is that they'd be taking gigantic steps.
Well,
I mean,
100% increase by 100.
If you improve communication, we should sit down and clap for you.
No,
Is that right?
improving communication simply means that dialogue is going on and that we can exchange. If the labor did not believe it was worthy of mention, they wouldn't mention it. You see, and the point about the economy, right? We've had inflation. You can't, if you increase salaries beyond a certain amount, right, you will know the consequences. There's always a knock-on effect.
Indeed.
And there is, you see, the economy is integrated. There have been shifts in the structure of the economy. There has also been quite a bit of funding coming in from, IFIs, mostly working on institutional reforms that will require sustainable. Everything has a gestation period. Policies have a gestation period. You cannot get a woman pregnant today and expect to give birth tomorrow. And this is where people should understand.
An interesting analogy,
that is precisely what is happening.
That was not what they told us during the campaign.
No, the point is this.
But let me just say this, because we're running out of time, and I appreciate the point. Just to further,
ASU has not been on strike. How many people, how many labor? Right. ASU has not been on strike. That is significant.
To further, because you see, it's important that we remain, we put the fire to the feet of the government, but that we also acknowledge when they're doing things right. And the truth is that President Tinubu has actually reduced the time period for the review of minimum wage and salaries to 2 to 3 years, whereas in the past it used to be 10 years. So that's quite a significant thing. But let me move over to Baba Yusuf, who is himself runs a very significant business that attracts a lot of investment and so on, and employs quite a number of people. So his take on this would be very important. From your point of view, looking at it from government policy and what the Tinubu government has done in the last 2 years, do things look bright or bleak for the Nigerian worker? Because both sides, as we mentioned, the government and the unions, seem to agree that at least they are engaging each other better now than they used to do.
Thank you very much, Charles. Well, I think one of the key things to note is that the employer will never satisfy the employee and vice versa. So what is important, taking it from what you said last, Charles, is the fact that the labor unions acknowledge that there is a door of communication opened and there are engagements ongoing. I also like the point about reduction of the timelines of review of salaries, of workers from over 10 years or about 10 years to about 2, which is significant. Of course, we are all feeling the pinch, most especially because let us also not forget, so that we can be very clear and objective with this, with regards to the brutal global economic headwinds. We can see what the tariff war is also generating. We have not started feeling the impact, most likely until quarter 3 or 4. But that being said, to whom much is given, much is expected. Mr. President has a mantra that we should not sympathize with him, that he knows the enormosity of the task before he took it. And indeed, part of the credentials he used, to win elections or to campaign was that he has that pedigree. And indeed, I acknowledge this many times. But what the time is now for us to see that leadership play out during crisis. We are going into midterm in the next couple of weeks. And employers and employees agree, especially we in the private sector, that we have multifaceted impact on the business that makes it even difficult to stay in business on one side, and makes it difficult to rein in investment to grow the business so that you can employ more people, because obviously government is not going to be able to employ, as much as they can. So what is important is also to the government not to lose sight of this crucial promise they made to people, because I reckon in the next couple of months, the focal point will be on campaign to 2027, as we are seeing. Right. That will be a huge distraction. And I hope that Nigerians, now it's the responsibility of Nigerians, obviously not political parties, opposition, to put the feet of leadership close to the fire, Charles, not just at presidential level. A lot is not happening at those subnationals that we all need to add our voices, right, to.
Okay. Well, look, we're going to take a break shortly, but before we do that, I need to get to this topic very quickly. So I'll implore you, gentlemen, to keep your answers to no longer than maybe 30, 40 seconds each at the most. Let's turn to the politics of defections. And this week, politics in this country has of late been feeling like a rather wild ride, with the PDP trying feebly and failing spectacularly to rein in its renegade members who've been throwing off the party's toga and joining the ruling APC in preference. How much of these internal divisions and the shifts in Nigerian politics thrown the PDP off course? How will the party that once dominated Nigerian politics ride out this unpredictability? And let me come to you, Mazi Iroegbu, because you are, of course, a member of the PDP. Looking at the defections, I wonder whether you see them as a temporary phenomenon which will ebb away soon, or whether this move to the APC is something more permanent that will essentially continue to weaken the PDP as 2027 approaches. Very briefly.
Quickly, thank you. The defectors, as far as I'm concerned, particularly those defecting from PDP to the reunion APC, is just unfortunate, really, because you wonder, what are they looking for? You leave a house where you are landlord and say to go and be a tenant in some place that is not safe for you. It's just unfortunate. But it also shows that kleptomaniacs that we used to have in the PDP environment are gradually taking the step of our party. And so soon, the party will stay focused and then move to the direction that the Nigerian people are yearning for. Direction towards saving Nigeria from this reunion APC.
Let me come to you, Mr. Fagbenro-Byron.
Thank you very much.
I think the point essentially is that why would you want to serve in heaven than rule in hell?
Well,
that's one way of looking at it. That doesn't mean that that's what it is.
Yes.
So please don't.
But that's not good for my party. My party is not hell, Charles. Please, I take exception to that.
I wanted to use that analogy because just
you have to correct it, because that's the marketing my party.
That's why I said to crack a joke. We're essentially cracking a joke. But please go ahead, Mr.
Well, I'm so glad at what this opportunity. Number one. The history of PDP shows that it's a party that never listens and doesn't learn. They made so many mistakes and they keep on making the same mistakes. A couple of years ago, when Sekondu was in power, there was a lessons learning exercise for PDP conducted by YBO, Badijo Okunsoya. None of the recommendations was carried out, and it was supposed to revive PDP. Another thing is this, PDP itself, right? Look, to blame people who move from PDP, when last did they have effect? It's been run so in a manner that has been so pedestrian, in such a way that anybody who means business will not hang on. I keep on saying that it's like latching on to the PDP, it's like latching on to the Titanic. And secondly, if I decide to, you cannot say,
the Titanic is a sinking ship.
It is a sinking ship.
And then and it's sunk, actually.
You cannot say, and you cannot say because a person moves, we are not slaves to any party.
Yeah,
you cannot say because, can I finish, please?
Right, no, we really must go.
Yes,
I told you 30 seconds.
Small point.
Now you've taken over a minute and a half.
A small point. You cannot move, because I moved from Redeemed Church to Seventh-day Adventist Church does not mean I don't believe in Jesus Christ.
Right.
I may think that the pastor has a problem. Okay. Or the church is being mismanaged.
Well, you mentioned that the PDP hasn't been holding its meetings.
They haven't.
The APC hasn't also been holding meetings.
Has never held a meeting.
But let me move on very quickly to Baba Yusuf. Baba, I don't know how much all of this suggests that Nigerian politics is in a real state of flux at the moment.
It is, Charles, and it appears the politics of bread and butter has taken its toll on the entire political system of Nigeria, or ecosystem, and especially with regards to the opposition party. Let me remind us that, in fairness to the APC, even though it's a coalition, majority of the parties that formed the political party APC were in the dungeons of opposition for over 15 years. So suffice it to say there is lessons for PDP to learn there. And truly, I agree. I've said it many times, I've written about it. PDP is in tatters because of three reasons. One, because of bread and butter politics. Two, because of the Atiku factor. Three, because of the linchpin strategy of a man called Nyesom Wike. The rest is history. They will never agree, but that is the reality. And that is the problem with the PDP, recognizing the issues they have so that they will move in the right direction to revive the party, if any. Otherwise, it will become a legacy party. Maybe in the next couple of years, we'll see what happens.
Well, thank you very much for that. You're watching Arise Prime Time. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our look at the week that was. Stay with us. Welcome back to Arise Prime Time. I'm Charles Enyegolu, and this has also been a week in which day by day, week by week, month by month, and year by year, the bills have been going up and the quality of life has been going down. And now the World Bank is predicting that it's all going to get worse and more people are going to fall into the poverty trap, despite the government putting up a robust defense. The World Bank said in its report that by 2027, poverty in this country would rise by nearly 4%. Bad news for so many who had been hoping for a turnaround in the economic fortunes of this country. And our three commentators with their illuminating beacons of knowledge are still with me, and they are the policy strategist and group CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company, Baba Yusuf, the public affairs analyst, Mazi Nnamdi Dixon Iroegbu, who is a member of the People's Democratic Party, and also the current affairs analyst and former presidential candidate, Fagbenro-Byron, who I have to say is a member of the APC. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Let's talk about the World Bank, and I think the last person I spoke to was Baba Yusuf, wasn't it? So let me come to you, Mr. Iroegbu. We heard the World Bank saying earlier in the week that poverty will increase to nearly 60% in Nigeria by 2027. One implication of that is that this country, is that contrary to what the government has been saying, they're not actually lifting people out of poverty, are they?
Of course not. And you don't need a soothsayer to tell you what it will look like in the next 12 months or 24 months, going by what we have already seen of the 23 months of this, I don't know how to define now, but the so-called renewed shege, if you ask me. But the point is that we have a chance, 2027. That's what the World Bank is trying to prompt Nigerians towards. we have a chance in 2027 to save ourselves by bringing in a new leadership that will give the nation a proper direction. In fact, I pity who will become the next president of Nigeria, because by the time this government is done, the ruining of Nigeria by APC would have been so obvious that you would have to really work your heart out possibly to fix Nigeria.
Okay.
So 2027, as the World Bank has rightfully predicted, that's what it is. But the Nigerian people have a chance to save themselves.
Mr. Fagbenro-Byron, what do you think the government should do to reverse the rising levels of poverty in Nigeria in the wake of this World Bank assessment? Or do you think the government is doing enough?
I think the government is already doing certain things. Number one, there are institutional reforms. There's a program called the Reset. It is critical, and it is funding specific institutional reform that will increase financial inclusion. There is the ASO agenda of 2025, which is expanding the economy to a 1 trillion economy by the year 2030, which means that by 2027, we would have gotten to some space. That program is a financial inclusion program, specifically for financial inclusion, which will include women, which will include the youth. There is also this issue of decentralizing. If we don't cascade, someone talked about, making demands. The demand side of governance is there. People have to make more demands to their states and local governments. The tax reforms have been there. The fact that the local governments have been unraveled for the people, the new laws. By the time so when the World Bank spoke, it spoke not definitively, but look, do this. I mean, this will happen if this and this will not happen. Fortunately, the government has already put things in place. And what we're waiting for them to gestate, for you to look at, say that the World Bank said it so that Nigerians will look forward to 2027, I think that is ludicrous.
Right, okay. Well, let me come to you, Baba Yusuf. What are your thoughts on that World Bank report predicting that Nigeria's poverty level is going to go up by about 4% by 2027?
Very well said, Charles. And let us also note that these predictions is not of Nigeria in isolation. There's a global, socio-economic headwinds. Of course, the domestic socio-economic headwinds, which may be a function of self-inflicted injuries, will only make it worse. I believe that what is important for government, especially in the case of Nigeria, receiving this message at this time of the year, going into Q2, and seeing the impacts of the global tariff war, is to go back and re-strategize. The initial plan that plugged into the budget 2025 will certainly not fly. So I will expect Mr. President and his team to have been looking at the numbers again in terms of the expected revenues, which will be obviously impacted, and also see how they can rejig some of the strategy and recalibrate in line with the current global realities and redomesticate their strategy in line with our global realities. 3-4 months ago, Charles, we didn't expect what is happening in Plateau, what is happening in Benue. We see the escalation in Borno and all that. So I will expect a re-strategization for us to see how we can generate and produce more. The special agri-zone projects that are being supported by the African Development Bank should be one of our linchpin strategy in terms of security and in terms of trying to generate more inwards, because currently, obviously, every country is trying to see how they can survive from within. All the talks about foreign direct investments and all the globetrotting now has to stop. Countries have to look inward and see what they can generate in the next couple of months.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic, and thank you, gentlemen, for keeping it nice and short. We need to keep them short and sweet so that we can get to everything. And this week, as the Tinubu presidency approaches the halfway mark, the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, issued yet another stark warning. This country, he said, faces perpetual economic stagnation unless it can arrest its electricity crunch. and he expressed deep concern about this staggering decline in Nigeria's GDP per capita, which plummeted from $1,847 at independence to just $824 in 2024. Given such a staggering decline, how much is this country's economic future at grave risk? And let me come to you, Mazi Iroegbu. Dr. Adesina warning about the dangers of the electricity pinch to the economy. That's not new. What is new is the alarm that he's raising, coming from someone in his position. The suggestion that Nigeria will be in perpetual economic stagnation is worrying, isn't it?
Oh, of course. It's very, very, very worrying. And that's another alarm, really. And of course, Nigerians can go back to the archives. Remember when the president, in some of the town halls that he organized during the campaign, he told the Nigerian people that if 4 years or thereabout, he doesn't give them power, forget him, that he should not consider him for a second term. We hope we are...
Well, in fairness, it's not 4 years.
No, yeah, it's okay. So, but it's 2 years already. So the point is that that's another warning, because clearly within the 2 years period of this government, that alarm is coming because there's no deliberate plan in the direction of giving Nigeria 24 hours light. There's no plan like that. It's just the same thing, the same story. If I left my house, of course, there hasn't been light for the past 2 days. So some angles of approach that the government has given, of course, if you, at this time, you're still keeping that same minister for power as we have had for the past darkness that we have had, then there's something wrong. You don't have any plan for that sector, because by now that minister for power ought to have been fired and given a new person given a proper order, really, if you may.
Mr. Byron, he also expressed, Dr. Adesina, deep concern about the staggering decline in GDP per capita, which fell from $1,847 in 1960 to just $824 in 2024. And of course, a significant part of that erosion occurred under an APC government. It sounds like a real sort of doomsday scenario, doesn't it?
Well, let me quickly respond to that. If he says on the energy thing, if my colleague says there is nothing, it's better to say you don't know than to say there's nothing.
Yeah,
as we speak, you're looking for show. As we speak, there is an engagement with the Germans, with Siemens, to expand Nigeria's grid capacity to 12,000 megawatts.
Yeah, but I don't mean to interrupt you, but the problem with electricity is that people just want to turn on the lights. They don't want to hear any stories. Nigeria has been engaging Siemens since Obasanjo came back in 1999.
Yes,
Siemens have made tons of money from this country, but they never see, I'm not talking about Siemens, the policies are never seen through.
Yes, well, but to say that there's nothing going on is wrong. On the issue of per capita GDP, of the per capita GDP, which is 800. Look, per capita GDP has a lot to do with population, because you divide everything what you earn by population. And so, for me...
Yeah, but it has to do with the size of your economy. You have to keep growing your economy as your population
grows. Nigeria's economy is growing at 3.4%. And how many economies in the world?
Well, actually, that percentage, that has been downgraded. It was downgraded by the IMF.
To what? I think it was downgraded from 3.4 to about 3.2, but not below 3. Not below 3. And the IMF, I mean, you know what the IMF has done. In terms of the trajectory we are going through, the IMF has sort of endorsed, I don't want to use the word endorse, but recognize that it's on the right trajectory. So for us to be able to get the benefit of GDP, the production has to come from the roots, from the ground. I agree with what has been said, but we cannot, production doesn't happen at the federal government. It happens at the states, it happens at local governments.
Okay, let me come to you, Baba Yusuf, and we're all trying to keep our answers reasonably short. I guess what's alarming is that the GDP per capita that Dr. Adesina was talking about, that was at $1,847 in 1960, it actually grew in 2010 to $2,120, but it has since dropped to its lowest point in 2024. And that would be through sheer mismanagement, corruption, ineptitude, and all the rest of it, wouldn't it?
That's totally correct. And to add to that, what is more depressing is that the number is almost 60 years all-time low, Charles, in the history of this country, and that should be alarming. And I want to advise policymakers and strategists of successive administrations and the one to come. From where I sit, and as a lesson for me in life and to the glory of God, we thank God for where we are. When I get a feedback that is like this, it challenges me. I wouldn't defend it. I will eyeball it from a practical perspective so that I deal with the critical pillars for success. That's what the administration should do. And I will expect going forward, keying it to what we discussed earlier with regards to the World Bank numbers and what we see in reality. I believe that one of the key success factors for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is provision of power, and to treat it as such, and to take it as a matter of critical emergency, just like national security. Without it, there's no development that will take place, Charles. People are generating their own power to drive businesses, to provide security. I know also that the lead time, like you said, Charles, for provision of power is long. And therefore, there should be no lag time for acceptance on only lukewarm attitude to the provision of power. We are totally out of time, and this should be taken very seriously.
Okay. Charles. Well, thank you very much indeed for that. And we've got about 5 minutes left for the program, so please, short and sweet answers. This was a week in which the president of the National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, is reported to have been attacked twice, incidents that have been confirmed here at Arise News. President Tinubu's son, Seyi, has denied allegations that he led, inspired, or goaded thugs to disrupt NAN's inauguration ceremony in Abuja, with NAN's president, Atiku Abubakar Issa, alleging that Seyi Tinubu arranged for him to be kidnapped and subsequently beaten up and forced under considerable duress to endorse a preferred candidate. Allegations Seyi roundly denies. Let's take a quick listen here.
There is a black Lexus. That was the black Lexus that the president's son bought. And there's another CNG bus. It's one of those buses that was shared to the student by the president. Was also there. That was the bus that contained those thugs, that brought those thugs to the venue. And they burgled into the venue and started macheting people. They macheted the president. You can see the picture of the president there. He was macheted, he was brutalized, and he was seriously injured. As it stands, as I speak to you, he's under serious health condition. We don't know where it will lead to, but we have to make the whole world know that.
Okay, well, that's just a very short snippet, and as I said, we're running out of time very fast. Mr. Iroegbu, what do you make of the allegations against President Tinubu's son? The fact that Tinubu's son is being talked about raises the stakes, even though we haven't seen any evidence that actually links him directly to that incident.
First off, this is a very sad development. It's a dangerous trend. If we allow this to just slide, then we're making room for anarchy. Sincerely, I am saddened. I've seen this video online. It's trending on social media, so I've taken time to watch it. And my worry is that up till now, the Nigerian police has not made a statement. By now, those names mentioned, including the president's son, ought to have been invited for us at least to get his own side of the story. He has no immunity. He was not elected to any government office. He's not appointed to any government office. So there will be no reason whatsoever anybody in that law enforcement agency will be delaying in the direction of inviting those names mentioned.
Well, that's an important
point. Just to ascertain
point.
the facts.
Yes, that's an important point. And let me come to you, Fagbenro-Byron.
Yes.
The challenge, of course, is finding the evidence to corroborate the allegations, although we're seeing videos and so on. Because just the fact that a person was beaten up, even subsequent to a meeting that is alleged to have taken place with Seyi Tinubu, doesn't mean that Mr. Tinubu sent thugs to attack the person, does it?
Exactly. You know, there's no evidence. It's a very sad, you know, event. There's no evidence. And I've seen a video in which the Nance president was actually granting an interview reciting what happened to him. It was very sad, but to be honest, you know, I'm a lawyer, you know, and pictures can be very deceptive. It's what we see in front. We don't know what is behind. I am not casting aspersions at anybody's accusation.
But it needs to be investigated.
And I believe it is being investigated.
Right.
It is actually being investigated.
Okay. Well, let me come to you, Baba Yusuf. You've got the final word on this. Do you expect that the police will have the guts to really dig deep and investigate this fully, or is it not likely to go any sort of further than social media posts and allegations and denials in the media, even though technically, as has been pointed out here, Seyi Tinubu is not immune to investigation or prosecution?
I totally agree that he's not immune, and I'm calling for investigation as well, because we cannot allow this to slide. But importantly, let us also know that Mr. Seyi Tinubu is a Nigerian. He has the right to free association and freedom of movement. But that being said, I would like to hear from the two senior citizens, elder statements in that meeting, former Governor, His Excellency Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, and former Senator of Kogi, Captain Idris, that were there present, because I saw a snippet where His Excellency Ibrahim Shekarau was actually speaking when the incident started happening. Unless I get the details, I am restrained from speculation. I don't like speculating.
Okay.
But it should be investigated. It should be investigated.
Okay. On that note, gentlemen, I know we would have wanted to talk more about this, but unfortunately we're out of time. But I want to thank all of you exceedingly great contributions from you, the policy strategist and group CEO of the Global Investment and Trade Company, Baba Yusuf, the public affairs analyst, Mazi Nnamdi Dixon Iroegbu, who's a member of the PDP, and the current affairs analyst and former presidential candidate, Fagbenro-Byron, who's a member of the APC. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again next week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.